songs, let me tell you about a friend. It's Craig LeBlanc where the good times never end. Talking Parks and Rec, it's a show you gotta know. Welcome one and all to the Daily Parks and Rec Show. It's the Daily Parks and Rec Show.
I do think that Parks and Recreation in general is definitely essential for your mental and emotional well-being, because you have to be outside. You need to, connect in different ways. I think that Parks and Rec professionals have to have a variety of skill sets, because we're dealing with so many different facets of the community, and sometimes in their most vulnerable, times.
Welcome back to the Daily Parks and Rec Show Leadership Series. In this episode, we're joined by Jonelle Bailey, Executive Director in Sycamore, Illinois, who is a lifelong Parks and Rec professional with experience spanning conservation, youth programming, nonprofit leadership, and executive management. Jonelle's story shows that Parks and Recreation isn't just about facilities or programs, it's about people, prevention, and purpose. From creating safe spaces for youth to leading through complex community challenges, her journey reflects what true leadership in this field really looks like. We'll explore how early experiences shape great leaders, why Parks and Rec is essential to community well-being, and how inclusive leadership is shaping the future of our profession. If you care about leadership, impact, and the heart of Parks and Recreation, this is a conversation you won't want to miss. Let's dive in.
Okay, we are live again. Second day of the week, freezing weather here in, like as if I know what freezing weather is, talking to Jonelle. Welcome to the show, Jonelle. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
Well, I'm not used to this. This is probably a summer day for y'all in Chicago or in the Illinois area.
Well, we did just get a foot of snow, so.
Yeah, we were talking about that.
Nice.
Y'all are so good at handling snow. We just hibernate. We're just like, we're shutting the city down.
I'm not mad at you about that, though.
Now you're in Florida right now, right? Moving your mama?
I am in Florida right now, so I'm getting a little mini break from the snow. But I've been getting pictures from my family of how pretty it is and how much we got. So.
How bad is this move? Is this like full on U-Haul all the way driven back up, or y'all just kind of?
Right now I'm just kind of prepping everything, and then we'll bring a pod down and pack everything up. So. Yeah.
Well, I just recently, when I say just recently, 7 days ago, moved full-time to New Orleans. So I was in a U-Haul, 9 days ago, heading this way with everything I own. So I'm still kind of in boxes. I just unpacked all my, maybe half of my library behind me. So now I got to figure out where to put all these books.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't ever want to move my house ever because of all the books that I have.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
It's crazy. It's crazy how much stuff we collect over the years. It's like, I got to get rid of some stuff. I have a chair collection.
All the knickknacks.
I've got way too many chairs. I've got to get rid of some stuff.
Chairs?
Yeah, I don't know what it is.
That's a new one. I haven't heard about chair collections before.
Well, I'm moving from like a 5-bedroom to like a 2.5 bedroom, and there's just not enough rooms. So I've got to get rid of like furniture. All right, but before we get started, I did want to play a promotion for our now Thursday Young Professionals Network show run by our interns. They created this without any help from me, and I just assigned them one of our newest video editors. And so now the show is on Thursdays at 5 p.m. Eastern, because that's a better time for college kids to attend the show. We had it like, to show us how disconnected we were from the college kids' schedule, we had it on Fridays at 12 noon, which many of them have classes or they're heading home or they're partying. So they were like, can we move this to a day in the middle of the week? And I'm like, absolutely. So they created this show. And so I made a little promo. I'll play that. And then I play a promo for strategic partners. They're just vendors that want to help us build this media company for Parks and Rec. So I'll play those two, and then we'll come right back and start our conversation with Jonelle.
On the Daily Parks and Rec Show, we bring you the real stories of tomorrow's professionals, people shaping the future, one idea at a time. Meet the very first DPRS interns to officially host their own segment. Aidan Tierney and Michael Morrow. With curiosity, passion, and a fresh perspective, they're stepping into the spotlight to lead meaningful conversations with today's rising leaders. The Young Professionals Network takes you inside the journeys, challenges, and major wins of young individuals making their mark across industries. From first jobs to bold ventures, every story fuels growth, ambition, and innovation. Each episode brings real conversations, fresh perspectives, and impactful insights created to motivate the next generation of professionals. Whether you're just starting out, exploring new paths, or figuring out your next move. Tune in to the Young Professionals Network every Thursday at 5 p.m. only on the Daily Parks and Rec Show. Don't miss it, because your next big idea might be one story away. Are you a vendor, brand, or service provider ready to connect with the heartbeat of local communities? At DPRS Media Co, we tell the stories shaping parks and recreation across America. Through podcasts, live streams, videos, and newsletters, we reach frontline leaders, city directors, and decision makers every single week. From youth sports and facilities to programming and policy, our audience is your audience. Sponsoring or partnering with DPRS Media Co puts your brand in front of the professionals who build, budget, and buy for their communities. Launching a new product, growing your presence in public spaces, targeting cities, counties, or departments, DPRS is your trusted media partner. Whether you're in software, turf, aquatics, robotics, smart cities, or special events, partnering with DPRS puts your brand in the story. With commercials, interviews, social campaigns, newsletters, and live shows, we're your media team. Partner with us and grow your impact in the $200 billion parks and rec industry. DPRS Media Co. Stories that move parks and rec forward. Your audience is here. Let's meet them.
All right. So, Jonelle, I would love for you. Let's just start with your kind of origin story, how you got into Parks and Rec, maybe even who you were as a high schooler, or were you one of these park rats that just kind of grew up in third grade in after school care and came in, or did you discover it later in life?
No.
Or how did you get into it?
I lived in the country. Both my parents worked, so we were out in the creeks, and I'm gonna say creek because it was a creek, not a creek, and the cornfields. And so we were just outside all the time. And I had influences from my Uncle Poochie, who would take me on his nature walks, and then my grandfather, who would, teach us about robin's eggs and turtles and all that other fun stuff. So
yeah. So you kind of came in on the nature green space side of Parks and Rec. It was kind of your first exposure to it.
Yeah.
And this is trails and stuff, green spaces?
I worked, I guess my mom would say that I had a sign that said "Eat at Joe's" at animal height to all the little animals in the neighborhood, which kind of drew me to forest preserves and conservation and wildlife rehab, which is kind of where I started. And then I drifted into teens. So
now, did you get what is your educational background?
Oh, it's all Parks and Rec. I actually started out as pre-veterinary medicine at Western Illinois, and switched to recreation parks, tourism, and administration. And at that time, that program was like third in the country.
Really?
Yeah.
What university was it?
Western Illinois University.
Okay. Western Illinois.
Yeah, I'm old, so it was in the 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved it. I got my minor in nature conservation, and I'm in my major in public administration. And so I kind of just went from there, which was great.
Yeah. All right. So the only thing I know about nature, what did you call it? Nature preservation?
Conservation.
I can kind of, through deductive reasoning, kind of think I know what that means, but why don't you explain it to someone who doesn't have a career in it?
Well, I think it kind of, if you're looking at a conservation district or a forest preserve district, you're looking at maintaining the natural areas, maintaining the ecosystems that are there, keeping them healthy, looking at how all of that influences the surrounding areas. So like we have a lot of nature preserves in Illinois that are surrounded by cities and different communities. And so, the waterways that come in, like there was one park I worked at where we had a huge beaver issue, and they blocked up some water, and we had to go out there with Fish and Game and remove the dam and relocate, encourage the beavers to move elsewhere, so that didn't affect the neighborhoods.
Yeah, the beavers don't really fill out permits and get licenses to build their structures.
Right.
Just kind of do their own thing.
Yeah. So there's various aspects of it. I was in a very minimal forestry, because I started out with veterinary medicine. I studied agronomy, like the soil samples and the different kinds of trees and how the soil affected that. So that's kind of where I went with it. But there's a bunch of different levels as far as conservation to consider.
Yeah. We have a show for facilities maintenance, and one of the guests I had on the show was from Texas, and I was like, let's just do a whole show just on agronomy, which is, I think, isn't that the kind of the study of grass or something like that?
It's a study of soil.
Study of soil. And so we ended up talking about irrigation and water, and 50 minutes later, we never got off the topic of water, never even got to all the other parts of it. And so I just learned how extensive that knowledge or wisdom base is. And there's so much to learn. So when you see a well-maintained park or nature preserve, there's so much that goes into that. Maybe you can kind of pick apart. Let's say you have, I guess, a native piece of land that you inherit as a city and you need to preserve it. What are the kind of the ABCs of that?
Well, you're looking at, like, is it a floodplain, a piece of floodplain, which is usually what we get as a gift. Areas that hold water. It's very thoughtful of them, but it's necessary, right? The water has to go someplace, and so we're looking to see what the native plants are there for the area, what's what we would like there, and what is there, and what the uses are going to be, like what's the surrounding area. Like, for example, we have a soccer complex that we put in where there used to be cornfields. And next to the soccer complex, we have a huge detention area that we planted with all native plants. That was a mix between like the wet and dry prairie grasses. And it's fantastic, so anytime you get rain, anytime, we have, we want to do some classes or whatever, it's a perfect place to actually go walk and see the, new salamanders that are coming in the area, new snakes that have come back to the area. More native species have started to relocate to those areas because they now have food sources and it's an area of safety. And so if you're gifted with these lovely pieces of property, you're really looking at what the water's coming in, like what's surrounding it and who's going to have access to it. And like I said, with our area, we were able to make it a native space. Some places have to leave it as a grassy detention area because of the location or the imagery, like there's a word.
A word that describes it.
There's a word to describe it, but it depends on, like what the community would like to see as well in those spaces. So,
and a lot of these green spaces, we'll have this vision of a park with all these non-native plants, but then it creates almost like a maintenance nightmare of these plants that really don't belong here. And so it's much easier to maintain native species. And then of course the little critters that come around are familiar with the native plants.
Well, and like we put a few years ago, we had a bunch of water that was gifted to the district over the course of the years. And we had huge issues with geese. And people didn't like the geese in their yard, and they didn't like the droppings from the geese and all that fun stuff. And so we did native plantings around all of our ponds, and that cut down on all of that. And it made it, it made it better for that ecosystem, that bioenvironment. Now, some people still think the native plants look weedy, or messy, but they bloom really pretty in the summer, you know? So, we just try to continue to educate the community about why we do that, how it keeps down on some of the pests that they were complaining about before. And the lack of hours that's spent maintaining those areas, which is actually more cost effective for the taxpayers. So they tend to like that part. So.
Right. Yeah, because they're used to the climate, they're used to the weather, they're used to the cold temperatures, hot temperatures, whatever you got. They're made for that, and you're not having to like force Mother Nature to look like this.
Correct.
She does it on her own. Yeah. All
Tends
right.
to be much
So
prettier.
you graduated college. What's your kind of first full-time job in this? What was your first step in that direction?
Well, in college, I was working for a forest preserve district, and I did like the campground and delittering and all sorts of crazy fun stuff. But I also learned about burn maps. I worked with them on that, about why the native burns were important, and looking at the season the proper seasons to do it in, looking at the wind conditions for burns. That was fascinating. I haven't had to know that much about burns since because we have, professionals that we work with. But it was really cool. And it was fun to, learn all about how fire affects certain trees and how it actually improves, some of the health of the areas that we manage and maintain. And then I went to a park district and I started working with teens and I did that for 8 years. So,
oh my goodness, that's quite a shift.
It was a big shift. And I loved it, honestly. I think one of the things that I really enjoyed about our recreation parks and tourism is the fact that you can combine all the things that you really like. Because I really enjoy teaching. I enjoy working with kids. I enjoy being outside. And I enjoy projects like making something, come alive and networking those people so that we can create something larger. And I've been able to kind of do all of that throughout my career because I can still stay in my field and basically have our charcuterie board, if you would, of career opportunities where I can work with teens and the public, and I can still do my nature stuff, and we can still do, education classes on those things and educating the kids on those things. And so that's been, fantastic. Honestly, I feel like I've been able to kind of craft all my favorite things into one career, which is
fantastic.
a joy of Parks and Rec in and of itself.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful industry as far as having just so much variety that comes together under the Parks and Rec umbrella of skill sets that you can work with. Maybe let's back up a little to someone that doesn't know how important fire and burning and having that kind of stuff is. I'm assuming that nature naturally through lightning strikes and stuff has some little small fires that are healthy. But maybe can you explain a little bit about what a burn map is, why it's important for an ecosystem to have that regularly?
Sure. So, you're looking at the contours of the land, the plants that you have on there, the trees that you have on there. And because we are surrounded by people and communities, burns don't happen naturally as frequently. And we want to be able to control the burn as much as possible so that it doesn't cause damage and it doesn't put anybody into harm's way. And so you have this burn map of the contours of that property. So you're looking at the hills, the breezes, which direction the wind's going, where your water sources are, looking at, do you have a buildup of brush because you haven't burned it in a long time? Do you have a lot of non-native species that have taken over? Because those tend to be more flammable because they are denser. And again, I haven't had to do this in a really long time. So I'm sure that there's, more technical terms. But, looking at the areas that you want to burn to get rid of some of the non-native species, to do that natural renewal that you would typically get with a lightning strike or something along those lines. But they'll create breaks and do like a back burn where you're burning a strip, and then, watching the weather conditions. So like, you're not going to do it on a really windy day, and then there's certain times where you burn stuff in the spring, or you do fall burns, depending on, the area, and the environment that you have, as far as like what's in there. But it's important because like certain trees don't, it's a red pine, like certain trees don't, their seeds don't come out without that fire. Like there's a waxy coating on the cones. And so like you won't have as many growing because they haven't had that natural fire to melt the wax on the cone, to have the seeds actually come out. So there's like several plants that, there's several plants that kind of have that need for renewal to actually grow and thrive.
Wow. God, Mother Nature's so smart.
She is.
Yeah, because I'm assuming that if you just are constantly putting out every fire, then you end up with this huge buildup of brush. That's a massive fuel source. And then if it's like been 20 years since a fire, when a fire does happen, it's out of control, and the whole forest just burns down.
Well, and it's too hot. You know what I mean? Like, so it's too hot and it'll damage the trees. So there's that as well. So it's, you're looking at your deadfall, you're looking at everything, doing a walk through the area you're going to burn, and just making sure that it's going to be as safe as possible, because you don't want it to get away from you. Yeah. So they do a lot. It's really cool. Like, if you ever get a chance to go on a burn, like definitely try it, because it's so, so cool.
Yeah, I bet so. All right. So now you're, you will. You're pretty much in a mini forest fire, a little ground fire. Okay. So now you've shifted into teens for 8 years. Tell us about that part of your career.
So I actually went to a job fair. I talked to the naturalist at this district, and she was like, "Oh, that you'd be great." And I was super excited because they had a great nature program, nature education. They had a whole, nature center. I was super psyched. And the gentleman who did teen programming snagged my resume. and I ended up, I'm not even sure how I ended up there, but it was it was actually the perfect space at the time. But I ended up working at the teen center, and I was at that teen center for 2.5 years. And then I went to another center in St. Charles for the rest of the time. And it was great because, again, I get to work with kids. I get to expose them to, the different nature and things that I enjoyed. But I also learned about camps and, different sports. I think I was responsible for like 4 different camps my first year out. I was doing training and customer service. Like, I got to it was like a crash course. It was probably like the perfect way to be introduced to a park district, being in that position. And I had really great leadership at the time. And it was really great in the aspect of the leadership team was really close. Like, they were very friendly. And so like I could go and learn about parks from the maintenance guys, and I could learn about how fields were lined, and I could ask all the questions and they would give me all the answers. So anything I was curious about, I could get that information. And I think that really kind of laid a healthy groundwork for, asking those questions, so that I could at least know. I may not know all the details or like how to do it, but I would know if something was wrong, right? I could ask enough questions and know enough about it so that I could be prepared to say, hey, this doesn't look right. Or, oh my God, this is fantastic. Thanks. That kind of thing. So it's been,
Fantastic. Now, is there anything as far as what are the skill sets that you entered that part of your career with that you found kind of lacking, that you had to kind of learn how to work with teens, create programming, and then on the back end of that 8 years, these are some skills that I really developed because I was put in that position?
I had no idea how park districts worked at all when I got into that. didn't have a strong budgeting knowledge. We didn't, for whatever reason, I didn't have that class. I missed that class apparently in school. But I didn't have a strong budgeting experience. I learned a lot about our registration systems and just planning, like creating those planning lesson plans and just timing between, like what the kids would like, what we have to do as far as the liability component. I learned a lot about insurance and a lot about waivers and what's considered high impact and what could be more dangerous. So we may not want to do that. And having to think about all of those things while you're making a plan to take kids to paintball, or, do a hockey program. And I would never have thought of any of that without kind of that framework to say, okay, here's our process. Here's why we do these things. We're looking at the safety. You're looking at the risk management of it. You're looking at the access that the kids have. And the community that I was in had a lot of first generation immigrants. And so the kids spoke English, like we had a lot of Polish and Russian and Slavic in our community. And so the kids spoke English perfectly. And then being able to translate that so their parents could understand it. That was also a component to all of this. And that, again, really gave me a great framework and base to start from as far as, hey, this is like the high level. This was like a big district. This is the high level. You have to look at all these things. So when I moved to smaller districts, I was like, oh, we can just do all of this. And it was nice. You could create those processes because I had already experienced them. So yeah, but like when I left, I think the biggest thing that I took from that was fundraising and talking to the community members. I had to do a lot of that. And I really, I'm much better in a one-on-one small group, people I know kind of conversation versus going out and doing the elevator speech, right? Selling the story and making sure that people have all the information in small bites. I'm not great with that. I'm better, but I really was bad at that then. And I think that helped me be more comfortable in really talking to the community about what we were doing in our district or with the programs. And that really was needed. It was needed.
Say more about the fundraising component, because I think what a lot of people don't realize is you get some type of tax funding, but then you're falling short, and so you need to find other ways to get funding into your program. What are some of those other ways that you had to discover, and then how did you work those?
Well, we did at one of the centers. We did a citywide garage sale, and so we would organize. We take care of the marketing, the signage, and putting it in our brochure. And then our teen center would get a certain amount of money from that, from the sale of like, hey, I'm paying for you to market this for me and give me these signs, right? And so the teens, I had the kids, I'd create a template and they'd create garage sale signs in all the colors and made it fun. And so we'd get like these big blank signs. And I'd do the stencil and then they'd color it in, and then the homeowners would come and pick them up. But we had to literally coordinate all of that throughout the city, figure out where signs could go. But that money, and then there was a holiday card writing campaign. We raised between $8,000 and $10,000 every year to support our teen program. And that covered, like new computers or games or sometimes furniture for the kids. And then we could also utilize that for like pizza parties and food and different things for some stuff that's going on in the camp. But it made a huge difference in the services we could provide to the kids, the staffing we were able to get, because that actually covered, partially covered one of the part-time staffers, because essentially at that point, I had to cover my salary, right?
Uh-huh.
Like make sure, okay, we're making enough money, we're doing these things, and that covers my salary. And then anything else, it's like, okay, well, this portion is being covered by this amount that we raise, these $8,000 to $10,000 we raise, and then the rest of it is going to the programming, the computer upkeep, the games, all those things. And that's kind of how it was presented at the time. And so it was a very big focus of what are we bringing in? How are we making this? Like we're having cooking classes, all of those things. And it really made you very aware of where those shortfalls were in the tax base. Because even though people come in and they're like, oh, my taxes pay your salary, actually you pay like 6%. 6% of your taxes come to the district. And most of that goes into maintaining the properties. It doesn't really go towards staff so much. So, learning about that aspect of it was huge too.
Now, how old were you at the time? Is this like your 20s and 30s that you're learning all this?
20s. Yeah. I was 24, 25.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Man, that's so great that this industry puts people in that position to be so deficient in skills and be like, go figure it out. This is your classroom now.
They're like, hey. It's like, you need to do all of this. I don't have a SOP or like training for it. So figure it out. And then you come back and let me know how you did.
Right.
Okay,
and then maybe the person taking your place inherits some of your process, but you had to start from zero and build it from there.
Well, yeah. And like the one center, both of the teen centers I worked at, they were brand new. So they hadn't, they didn't have a basis. So like the first one, I was there for 2 years, started at the beginning, the second one, or 2.5, whatever. And then the second center, I came in, I didn't even come in as the director there. We had a different director. And he lasted, I don't know, maybe 6 months. And he's just like, okay. And we literally started from scratch, had no processes. The people that had the teens that had actually done like the focus groups were like football players and cheerleaders and they're like in all the booster clubs, but those weren't the kids that were coming to the center. The kids that were coming to the center are the latchkey kids, the kids whose parents work until 8 o'clock at night, who may have some behavioral disorders. We had a lot of different, kids that were there because it was better or safer than hanging out with the friends or being at home. And so training not only the staff to be able to handle some of those emotional needs, and recognizing some of those danger signs of like depression with kids and, who may be doing drugs or, things along those lines was brand spanking new because I didn't have any of those issues at the other center because it was a different community. And, talking to our leadership, my boss and saying, okay, you guys are expecting these kids to be here because they're asking, well, why don't you have these kids here? Why aren't the football players coming? Why? I'm like, because they're practicing, they don't need to be here for this. This isn't what they need. These kids need us, like some of these kids I saw more than their parents did. And I know I fed them like twice a day,
Right.
And 3 times on weekends because they were there from when we opened to when we closed, and sometimes like the only people that were asking how these kids' days was my staff or I, and knowing when they were having a bad day and knowing when things weren't right. And that, we definitely had processes after I left. So the person that took it over, they had their own thing, but they at least had a place to start, which was nice.
Yeah. Okay. So we're at the kind of halfway point. I want to play a couple promos for some of our other shows, but when we get back, I want to dive even deeper into the teen center and how kids really grow up in Parks and Rec. And these, in my opinion, these make some of the best Parks and Rec professionals that were pretty much born into this industry. This was like from 3rd grade, from in the morning till late at night. This was their home. This was their family. This was their network. and now they're serving this part of it. But let me play these two promos for our Youth Sports Mastery show. So if you're into youth sports, Aaron Locks runs our Thursday show all about youth sports. He does a great job of getting some of the best athletic directors and coaches and pro athletes to come on that show. So that's every Thursday. And then I'm going to play our facilities maintenance show, which we're building out. And it's all about how to maintain Parks and Rec facilities and stuff. So we'll play those two, and then we'll come right back and finish up our conversation with Jonelle.
At DPRS Media Co, we don't just create content. We elevate community through storytelling. Now, we're proud to introduce the newest addition to the family. Welcome to Youth Sports Mastery, the podcast where champions are shaped, not just on the field, but in life. Hosted by National Academy of Athletics founder Aaron Locks. Youth Sports Mastery dives deep into how youth sports can empower kids, strengthen communities, and build leaders. From coaching culture to recreation strategy, and from player development to parent impact, every episode brings game-ready insight from the people making it happen. Youth Sports Mastery goes live every Thursday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Only on the Daily Parks and Rec Show, sponsored by National Academy of Athletics and powered by DPRS Media Co. This is where purpose meets play.
Behind every thriving park, every safe playground, every event-ready field, there's a team working before sunrise and long after sunset. This is Facility Maintenance, the only show created for and by the unsung heroes of Parks and Recreation. Brought to you by DPRS Media Co, where real work gets real recognition. From restrooms to rec centers, HVAC to turf tech, we go beyond the job site into the heart of operations that keep our communities moving. Our mission? To elevate maintenance teams through stories, solutions, and shared experience. Our vision? A world where every facility crew is seen, valued, and fully supported. Each episode features operators, innovators, and leaders, sharing tools, tech, and tactics that make the impossible look easy. Facility maintenance isn't just a job. It's purpose, it's passion, and now it's a show. Facility Maintenance, where tools meet purpose, where work becomes legacy.
All right, so back into teen centers. Maybe just describe, from a base level, what is a teen center, and then what is the value you think it brings into the community's lives, but specifically the people that really use the teen centers?
Teen centers are spaces where kids can come in and just kind of have a place that's their own, be with their friends, make friends. It's a safe place to be if their parents aren't home. It does provide a sense of community. At least, they're not as popular now, but, at least at that point, that's what those are the environment that we provided. It was a supervised, safe space where they could do homework, get homework help. They could play pool or video games, socialize in a safe way. The parents, most of the parents knew they were there, and it kept them kind of out of trouble. And we did have some kids that were graffitiing the local grocery store that was down the street, and the owner of that grocery store had called me, and he's like, "Hey, you've got all these kids hanging out and they're causing all these issues. What can we do to work on it?" And I told the kids, I was like, "Listen, this is a brand new facility. You guys they can close us down. So we have to be good neighbors." and they're like, "Okay." I said, "So if we're good neighbors, what do we do?" And they're like, "Well, we shouldn't probably tag up the grocery store." I was like, "Yes, please don't tag up the grocery store, because they're coming to me and talking to me about it. And then I have to yell at you. And I know who it is because I know who your tags are. So let's not do that." Yeah. A tag. It's, they're signed. Yeah, well, their street signature. So they'll
Mhm.
take like a big fat, Sharpie, and
Mhm.
they have like the little designs that represent their name.
Mhm.
So they'd have that all over the place. And we had just opened a skate park down the way as well. And so the community was like, there's this huge influx of teens and they're skating and they're riding BMX bikes and they're tagging the systems. And there's too many kids all at once. And so there was a lot of the downtown community adjustment, getting used to having these kids all over the place.
Mhm.
And it was nice to have one location where they would come, they'd meet up, and then there was rules. So like we were very specific about our rules. It's like, listen, you can't swear, you can't, don't destroy be good neighbors. And if you're coming in, you have to be respectful for everybody that's here. And that took a little bit of practice getting them used to it, but then they started, kind of self-managing. So if kids were,
Mhm.
if you swore, it was 10 push-ups, right? It's 10
Nice.
push-ups, you go outside for 10 minutes. Your choice,
Yeah.
And so that was a thing. And the kids were like, you swore, it's 10 push-ups. And so then they go and see how many push-ups they could do. That
Self-police.
kind of thing. Yeah. So it made it more of a game, but it
Yeah.
also allowed them to create and maintain, their own rules for their space. And I
Yeah.
think that really helped them kind of, keep it the way they wanted to see it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember when we were struggling with the identity of, are we essential? Are we non-essential? And like, okay, the police are essential, the fire
Mhm.
department's essential, but those are very reactive sides of a community. Like when something's gone wrong, then you have these essential services that come in and deal with what happens when the community wasn't healthy. But Parks and Rec departments through teen centers and other types of programs are like the preventative side of,
Correct.
we create the healthy community so that these other departments in a city don't even have to respond. Um, I've even heard of some cities having graffiti walls that they would
Mhm.
paint
Mhm.
over once a month, but then the
Yeah.
kids would come in and they just had a place to focus all this artistic energy that wasn't as destructive.
At my first center, we had one whole wall was a graffiti wall, and they couldn't,
Mm,
there were rules about nothing inappropriate, but
right.
they had a fantastic time. And some of the art that these kids could do and came up with was phenomenal. And
Yeah.
so also encouraging them, hey, you could do this professionally, and they're like, I never thought about that.
Yeah.
Um, and the kids, a lot of the kids at the second center, because they were there, like I said, from when we opened to when they closed, they got jobs. When they turned 18 or when they graduated high school, they came and worked at the center or they worked summer camps. Um, and, this one kid, 16, he worked for the same district from when he was 16 to when he got married in his 20s
Wow.
and, had done a variety of jobs and then moved to Tennessee.
Ah,
So with his wife, but he's still in Parks and Rec, so that was fantastic seeing him grow. And then this other kid was just like super sweet. He'd come in. I've known him since he was 11. So he's a sixth grader. And he ended up, he hung out a lot with like the maintenance guys. He ended up becoming an electrician. And then I found out he was on my brother's bowling team.
no
So like
way.
just right. Like, and that was super random. But like those kind of things, like there's still several of the kids that I worked with that I still talk to, and they're all across the country. So actually one's in Columbia right now. Um, but it's, I had kids come out to me, and they were, and I'm like, okay, do you need me to be there when you talk to your family? And he's like, no, I don't think so. But he was able to say, okay, this is what I want to say to my mom when I come out to her.
Yeah.
And that's huge, and it's creating those spaces. I do think that Parks and Recreation in general is definitely essential for your mental and emotional well-being because you have to be outside. You need to, connect in different ways. But I think that Parks and Rec professionals have to have a variety of skill sets because we're dealing with so many different facets of the community, and sometimes in their most vulnerable, times. Like I had kids come in after their parent died, or they got, like this one kid got he got diagnosed with diabetes, and it made him really angry, and he had a lot of issues at school because he was angry about this diagnosis and scared. And so he would cause issues when he'd come to the center. And it wasn't until I called his dad and I was like, what is going on? And being able to sit down with him and his dad and talk about it, and just be like, okay, here's another outlet, where you can actually have a conversation and it's not your parent. And we get people in all their variety of emotion and all their variety of situations on a daily basis. And you never know, just like anything, you never know what people are going through. And sometimes that kind word, or just saying, are you having a good day? Are you all right today? Can change their whole trajectory. So, I think we are definitely essential as far as Parks and Rec. And I think the team's programming is specifically.
Absolutely. I mean, unless you want to deal with a very unhealthy, chaotic community, then having a healthy Parks and Rec system creates that community health that, doesn't have so much destruction and gives these kids a little more focus on productive things.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So then what is your, gosh, I can't believe we're at the 44-minute mark. Tell us kind of up to where you are today. And I don't want to save the last few minutes to talk about the minority in Parks and Rec organization that you're working with.
Okay.
But all right, so you left the teen, and then kind of what's your next position after that, coming into where you are today?
I moved to Virginia and worked for a park authority out there. Yeah, and that had a high ropes course and some other stuff. And then the other park authority I worked at had a massive event center that I ran. So we were running events from 2,000 to 30,000. So like wine festivals, food festivals. And my initial background before schooling was catering. My mom had a catering business and a restaurant. And so that kind of appealed, being able to like kind of run that, appealed to that organizational OCD mentality. But it was a lot of fun because again, you're meeting a whole bunch of different people. You're creating events and spaces for people to come together. And then I moved back to Illinois, with my husband because I met him out there.
Wow.
Yep, brought him home, and brought him to the cold. He's never forgiven me. I worked for a park district as a superintendent, and then I worked for the Salvation Army for 6 years. And they had me all over the place. So I was in Georgia for 6 months. I ran programming and grant funding for 6 centers in 5 states. And so during COVID, that was fun. Managing all of the health codes and like what we could do for programming and kind of working, in our central district, trying to figure out like what we could and couldn't do. And then obviously the fundraising came in with that because there's huge, the Salvation Army definitely needs the fundraising in order to function. And so that gave me a whole different perspective of a nonprofit Parks and Rec system. Because I work for their Croc centers, which there's 26 nationally.
What's a Croc center?
Okay, I was going to ask. So I was like, I don't know if you know what those are. So, Ray and Joan Kroc McDonald's, right? So Joan Kroc donated $1.5 billion to the Salvation Army to create community centers in underserved areas.
Wow.
So like there's one in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, where like there was nothing. And there's the ones that I worked with was the one in Augusta, Georgia. I was at the Chicago Center for, that was where I first was Chicago Kroc Center. And then I worked with Chicago, Quincy, Green Bay, Grand Rapids, and Omaha. And they literally are providing like swimming lessons to the African-American, the Black community, because they have the highest rate of drowning, in our communities. And then, just providing health. So they usually have a fitness center, a gym, some kind of worship center, and then just various programs and like food pantries and things like that for those communities that don't typically have services, especially like areas that are in food deserts, and they'll have, like healthy cooking classes and things like that. So in that respect, it was like the teen center, but on a community-wide path, because you're dealing with all ages and all the needs. And typically people are struggling. And so you're providing opportunities for them to experience some programming or things that they wouldn't normally have access to at a lower cost, but also maintaining that safe space for them to be there and learn and connect.
Yeah.
And then I came here to Sycamore.
So what is a food desert? Because it's weird to think that in America we have these food deserts, but even like middle of cities we have these food deserts. So maybe
especially in the middle of cities. Okay,
Yeah.
so food desert is like you don't have grocery stores. It's a restricted access to like fresh, healthy foods. So you'll have like a lot of corner stores, you'll have like liquor stores, you'll have Dollar Generals, things like that. But you're not necessarily going to have like a Kroger or a Jewel or a Winn-Dixie or a Publix, right? So where it's not necessarily easy for you to get there to get your vegetables or like certain meats, that kind of thing, where you're going to get like a more well-rounded diet. You're going to get a lot of
like box
processed
foods.
foods.
Processed foods,
right?
yeah.
Shelf stable, which there's nothing wrong with that, but you don't have as much access to it. And then sometimes, like where I was in Chicago, they had they didn't have, before they built the Croc, they didn't have a Jewel in that area. Like you had to go like 15, 20 minutes by bus sometimes to get to like a grocery store. And then when they put in a Jewel food store, which is a chain in Chicago, and then it was like less than a mile from the Croc Center, less than a mile from the majority of the houses that we served. And that was new. It was huge because, it was close. So it's those kind of things. There's a lot of places across the country that don't necessarily have access to those kinds of stores, and they're considered food deserts where you have very limited fresh food options.
Yeah. And I think this is where a lot of the farmers markets can kind of come in and solve that problem and just kind of have these pop up once a week, 4 hours, and you get to buy from the farmers. Right. Or like now almost 100% of my food comes from farmers markets. So I actually know the cattle rancher that's raising the cows. And then on Saturdays he sells his, beef. But then you've got all the little vegetable gardeners and stuff, and so much better play. Plus, most of the money goes back to the people growing and raising the food versus going through this massive supply chain.
Right, and that would be great. I was working on the south side of Chicago, so there's not a whole lot of gardeners that are coming out that way. They were doing a lot of urban garden programs, which is also fantastic. But sometimes it's still the challenge of getting people to those locations, and especially if the area has a bad rap as far as the safety of that community that they might be going to, it does tend to prevent people from, taking that chance sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So then in 2020-ish, you started as an executive director where you're at now. Is that about right?
Yes, that is correct. So,
so what do you do right now? So as an executive, did you start right at COVID? Was that just perfect timing?
It was in August of 2020. So that was fantastic. It was actually nice for me because I was only dealing with one center and one community versus 5 and, a couple of different, or 6 in 5 different states. But yeah, so I was able to come in, and our staff was fantastic. Our center didn't close during COVID like a lot of places did. We just had, we restricted the amount of people that were in like our fitness center, or that would be in the center. Like we'd had time blocks where people would come in, but we never actually closed, which was really nice. And it really gave not only the staff, purpose because, there's a lot of people that got laid off. There's a lot of programs that closed, but it gave the community an outlet that, that you weren't necessarily getting unless you could be outside. Like by the time I started, everybody was outside, but I know that in the winter it was a lot more challenging. Even as we went into 2021 and we're still trying to work with those changing protocols, it really helped so that we had already developed a process to let people recreate and get out of their house because as we all remember, that was challenging. So.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got so many more questions for you. So we're maybe just going to do like a part 2 on you and your career and what you've spoken on through Parks and Rec. It's been quite extensive, but I want to give you a few minutes to just give like a teaser as to, you said it started in 1975, the organization that works with minorities.
Yeah. So it's the National Parks and Recreation Ethnic Minority Society. And it was started by African-American leaders in the field that needed a sense of community, that weren't always notified when positions were open, and were tended to be overlooked. And so it was also an opportunity to create mentorship programs and training and let people, inform people of, hey, this is opening or this education is happening. We can create a scholarship for you to go to this training. And that'll help you, in your career and whatever. And then you can mentor people and bring them up behind you. So it's been around for forever. And I'm lucky enough to be the chair-elect this year.
Wow.
Well, for the next 2 years. It's been really fantastic. And so what we're doing right now is our previous president, Chris Bass, who is in Douglasville, Georgia, he really brought us to a new level of like what we can be doing and what we should be doing in the field for minorities in Parks and Recreation. And so I'm really happy that I didn't have to do the groundwork for that. And I get to just kind of, cheer him on, but also build on what he put it together. Because a couple years ago, we all sat down and as the executive committee and created a new strategic plan. We created our mission, vision, and goals, and really, try to lay out the groundwork for where we wanted to be in the next 50 years as an organization, and how we wanted to reach the Black and brown communities, but also help educate on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging across our field. And so what we're doing right now, we started our Equity Summit last year. That's going to be every 2 years. We have our Urban Park Tour, which is going to be this April in Columbus, Ohio. And then our next Equity Summit is going to be in DeSoto, Texas in 2027. So, and we're bringing people in from all over the place, talking about, the challenges people have in their communities, how we can combat that. We talked about homelessness when we were at our last Equity Summit, which was in Decatur. And that was a fantastic conversation, because as with all the conversations you've had with all the professionals, Parks and Rec is the catch-all. We're the mental health. We do, healthcare. Like there's a whole bunch of different things that different cities and communities do. And, dealing with the homeless community, because they're usually in our parks, they're utilizing libraries or our recreation facilities and things like that. Being aware of that was huge, and the challenges that come along with it. And so we're really focusing on education for the next couple of years in that build out, and really trying to work on, what those needs are and how we can better prepare our staff and our community leaders to take that information and really apply it as needed, and help our communities grow. So there's a lot more.
Sure. And if you'd like to help me organize maybe just at least one more show, where you can get yourself and maybe a couple other, leaders in that community, and we can just maybe do a little deeper dive into, what it is, where it came from, and the vision, like you said, what's the next 50 years looks like. And then if it works out, maybe we can do like a monthly show where 12 times a year, we're just checking in. And where's y'all's next event?
It'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. Where's y'all's next event? You said y'all meet once a year, and it kind of travels all over the country.
Yeah, so this is gonna be the Urban Park Tour, reimagining parks, and it's gonna be in Columbus, Ohio,
Yeah.
April 12th and 13th, I think. But it's that week. It's like 2 days. So,
Okay.
and then you get CEUs. We work with NRPA to get our continuing education units. So it's going to be fun. I think we're
How
excited
many
about it.
people? How many people attend typically?
This is the first year that we're doing this
Mhm.
that I know of. Let me say this. This is the first year I've been a part of the Urban Park Tour. The Equity
Mhm.
Summit was brand new, and we did that last year. And we had a little over 80 for a
Mhm.
2-day conference. But we already have people that are signing up for interest for the Equity Summit in 27.
Okay.
So I'm fully expecting that to be much bigger.
Yeah. Well, let me know, because now we're starting to take the show kind of on the road. We're attending about 20 different annual events. Most of them are just state parks and rec conventions that
Mhm.
happen annually. But we just finished up Georgia and had such a great experience over there. They had like 800 people. It was the best and biggest they've ever had. And we were able to interview like probably 30 or 40 attendees. And these were speakers, these were regular attendees, people that kind of ran the whole thing. And so
Mhm.
maybe we could do something like that to kind of give a little more awareness around what y'all are doing.
That would be
Um,
fantastic.
yeah, let's do it. All right. So we have a little tradition towards the end of the show where my previous guest, Tracy Hook, left you a question. And then I'll need you to think of a
Okay.
question that you can have for my next guest. All right. So
Okay.
the question Tracy left you was, and she actually helped found the Women in Parks and Rec for the Carolinas. But her
Okay.
question is, biggest Parks and Rec fail.
Oh.
Like, what is
Um.
something that you, I guess, did and just kind of did a face plan, and then what are the lessons learned, stuff like that?
Um. I don't know. I don't know if it's a Parks and Rec fail. I think it was a science nature nerd fail.
Hmm.
I I it sounds so awful. We had some dry ice,
Uh-huh.
and I was like, "Hey, this is a really cool science thing, whatever." And I was talking to one of our younger staff in our maintenance team, and I had put dry ice in a bottle with some water, and I was like, "Hey, listen, like this is we're talking about the science and the gas expansions, whatever." And I put it like way far from us because I knew it was going to explode, right? My mistake was showing that young staff how to make a dry ice bomb, essentially.
Oh my
And that
gosh.
was like, I wasn't thinking about it in that respect, like the safety aspect. I was like, "Ooh, this is a really cool science experiment."
Yeah.
And yeah, so that didn't go very well. And I had to come forward and be like, "This is all my fault." And
Yeah.
this is how this came about. And luckily nobody got hurt, but it was just that was a huge fail for me, like
Oh
across the
my
board. But
gosh.
it did make me
Oh,
think about, how you influence people,
yeah.
what your
Yeah.
actions influence. So
I love that. What a great story. All right. So what question would you like to leave for my next guest?
um that is a great question. What is their most interesting customer service fail or story?
Yeah, this is a good one. Customer service fail or story. The fails have the best stories.
Yes. The good stories are usually fails.
Right.
So,
There's a landmine right there. Don't step on it.
right.
Fantastic. All right. Well, Jonelle, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I can't wait to create a couple other shows with you. I think you've got a great story to tell and share. And then I want to help y'all get the message out on all the things y'all are doing for the minorities in the industry. I think that would be great
Okay.
content for the whole country to hear. Um,
Fantastic. I look forward to it.
Well, enjoy the warm weather while you're down in Florida for as little as you're there before you head up to the where the Eskimos live up in
My
the
tundra.
north. Right.
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, great having you on the show, and have a great rest of your week.
Thanks. You too. Thank you.
Yep. Appreciate it, Jonelle. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
All right. So that was Jonelle Bailey up in the great state of Illinois that does such a great job with Parks and Rec. I mean, they pretty much have it on a whole nother level with their districts and everything. But yeah, I mean, that would be great, I think, to create a show about all the efforts to help uplift the minorities in Parks and Rec. I know they're doing a lot of good work. It's just a matter of getting the word out. And I think that would be another great organization in the country that needs a lot more knowledge, wisdom, education, awareness. And we're going to do our part to help get the word out for that. All right. So as I said yesterday, we do have 3 new shows that should be launched in January, December and January. So we are launching MWR, which is Parks and Rec in military bases. It's going to be all about how Parks and Rec operates on the over 300 global military bases for our soldiers that are deployed overseas and here in the States. And that's going to be a Tuesday show, 1:30 p.m. Eastern every Tuesday. We'll do it. I think the Tuesday lands on the 16th of December. And then in January, we're just going to start rolling every week. We've also working with Her Sports. Jordan Ziff is a former pro soccer player that is interviewing females in pro sports. And she actually does a cool thing. She goes kind of behind the scenes about what they do to prepare for a game and what's it like to be a professional athlete, a female professional athlete. So that's a great show. And then we're also launching, with the help of OutdoorLink, one of our big sponsors. They imagine if you want to control your entire city through an iPhone app or an iPad, where you're turning stuff off and on, locking bathrooms, turning on sports field lights, all with a great application that sits on your smart devices or on your desktop. And you don't have to have these keys and padlocks and disconnects. It's just really great. So we're going to create like a smart city show with them. So those are 3 shows that are launching very soon, just to add to the programming as we try to create 24/7 programming for Parks and Recreation. So really looking forward to that. All right. So we got also a great lineup for the rest of the week. Please tune in. And then Thursday is going to be a big day because we've got our regular leadership series. We've got our followed by our Youth Sports Mastery show on Thursdays with host Aaron Locks. And we have our new time slot for the Young Professionals Network every Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern. We're going to have 3 shows on Thursday, really starting to build out just our content library. Now, all of this that can be found on YouTube. Please, if you're still listening, go to YouTube and subscribe to the channel so that we can open up some more functionality and get live stream on YouTube. We do live stream every day on LinkedIn and YouTube and X. So we're trying to pick up that 4th live stream that'll go live on YouTube, so that way we're just getting more Parks and Rec content out there into the world, telling people all the stuff that happens in Parks and Rec. So lots of good stuff happening. All right. So that's all I have for y'all today. Thank y'all for attending, and I will see y'all here again tomorrow. Love you guys. Thanks a lot. Bye.
At DPRS Media Co, we believe Parks and Recreation isn't just a service, it's the heartbeat of our communities. We exist to honor the people, the vendors, and the leaders shaping the future of Parks and Rec. Our mission is simple: to tell their stories, highlight their careers, and celebrate their essential work. Our vision is bold: to be the trusted hub where leaders, vendors, and communities unite, inspiring innovation, sharing wisdom, and building a stronger, healthier nation. Through over 220 live shows and 6 weekly series, the Leadership Series, Facility Maintenance, Young Professionals Network, Youth Sports Mastery, The Rec Room, and Growing Leaders, plus our industry-leading newsletter, the weekly Parks and Rec Post, we're building a media platform made for the Parks and Rec community. And now we're inviting strategic partners to co-create this story with us. As a partner, you'll gain 12 hours of annual live exposure with custom shows highlighting your expertise, polished 60-second promos refined for maximum impact, year-round visibility with dozens of replays across our media network, premium features in our newsletter, and amplified social media reach across LinkedIn, X, and Facebook. This is your chance to educate, inspire, and lead while connecting directly with the professionals who build, budget, and buy for their communities. This is DPRS Media Co. Let's build the future of Parks and Rec together. Welcome to DPRS Media Co, the first media company built for the people behind the Parks and Rec community. We don't just cover on Parks and Rec, we elevate it, we amplify it, we honor it. At the heart of everything we do is one mission: to serve the public servants, the professionals who design, maintain, and lead the parks that shape our communities. Under the Daily Parks and Rec Show, we produce 6 powerful platforms. Leadership in Parks and Rec, a spotlight on directors, superintendents, and visionaries shaping the future of public spaces. Facility maintenance, where the boots hit the ground, a deep dive into the systems, crews, and craftsmanship that keep our parks clean, safe, and beautiful. Young Professionals Network, shining a light on the next generation of Parks and Rec. Students, interns, and mentors sharing how we build a legacy together. Youth Sports Mastery, sponsored by National Academy of Athletics. This series is for coaches, parents, and rec leaders working to make youth sports fun, fair, and meaningful again. The Rec Room, hosted by the passionate leaders of Henry County Parks and Rec. This show brings frontline energy and real-life stories from the field. And the weekly Parks and Rec Post, our official newsletter delivering stories, insights, and community wins every week. We are DPRS Media Co, LLC, a media company with a mission to uplift the professionals who serve every community, every park, every day.